Hey, everybody. This is Blair Anderson with Guild Mortgage. I have today with me Dr. Randy Ross, the author of Relationomics. I wanted to thank you, Randy, for joining me today, and would like to tell a little story of how we met, which is kind of fantastic. I was actually in Dallas at our national sales conference, and get on the plane to head back home, and the guy that sits by me is Dr. Randy Ross, and we hit it off, had a great conversation on our flight from Dallas back to Atlanta, and have stayed in touch ever since. He was kind enough to have his last copy of his book with him and gave it to me. He was really concerned whether or not he even had one, and dug one out of his bag, and I read it, and it's been such a pleasure to have met you, been in contact with you, read your book, and just wanted to thank you for taking time and spending with us today, and just talking a little bit about how we can improve our relationships and provide our viewers with some nuggets that they can incorporate and implement in their lives.
Absolutely, Blair. I appreciate you having me be a part of the conversation today.
Well, fantastic. Well, let's jump in. I hope we get some questions. But what I'd like to kind of start with is, having read the book, what is your definition of a relationship, or characteristics that make up a healthy relationship?
Well, that's a great starting point for us. And so let's define relationships, and let's talk about some of the elements that are necessary, and then some questions that we can ask to determine the level and the quality of our relationships. I think relationships are just simply a connection between two people that are marked by certain things. And I think there are three that readily come to mind: trust, respect, and value creation. And if I can unpack those, when people
Sure.
decide whether or not they're going to follow us or they're going to engage in a relationship with us, be that a client relationship or collegial relationship, there are essentially three questions that they ask. The first question is this person competent? Do they know what they're talking about? Is there a level of expertise, skill, talent, ability? Because they want to make sure that we know what we're doing, we know what we're talking about. So competence. Is this person competent? But the second question they ask is this person trustworthy? In other words, when push comes to shove, are they going to take care of themselves? Or are they going to throw me under the bus? Or will they do what's right? Are they people that can be counted upon to do the right thing regardless of the circumstances? And the third question they ask is, and I think this is important, does this person have my best interest at heart? And that's where the value creation comes in. Relationomics was a lot of fun to write, because it was about how do you enhance interpersonal relationships? How do you build teams that stick together? How do you create a camaraderie that inspires people to bring their best to work every day? But in our other book, Remarkable, we talked about some cultural norms and some things that you can use to identify the quality of relationships, use to identify the quality of the culture of an organization. And so let me just give those three to you as well, because I think it plays into this whole relational realm. But healthy relationships, or a healthy culture, can be defined by this trilogy. It's when people believe the best in one another, they want the best for one another, and they expect the best from one another.
Wow.
So again, believing the best in one another speaks to trust, right? Because it's foundational for all relationships. Believing the best in is where we have to start, but then wanting the best for. So do I want the best for someone else? In other words, this isn't about me, it's about how I can help someone else grow. But then lastly, I think this idea of accountability, then we also expect the best from one another. So it's interesting, whether you're talking about relationships with your family, with your spouse, with your kids, if you're talking about relationships with your colleagues, if you're talking about relationships with your clients, those three characteristics, that three-pronged trilogy, is a great way to test things. Do I believe the best in? Do I want the best for? And can I expect the best from? When you've got those three elements together, you've got some solid relationships, and you've got Relationships upon which you can build a strong culture.
Well, and it sounds like in that trilogy, you have some selflessness, right? It can't be all about me.
That's right.
It's got to be about really focusing on others. But you also have to put good things in that allow you to be selfless, right?
That's right.
I mean, so you can't go, in this, when we first talked, I was like, out there on the internet, there's so many things, there's so much noise. And I love the internet, but that's just been my experience, because when you were talking about, trust, and being competent, right now, while we're all sitting at home watching the internet, television, it's hard to really know what's the truth.
Yeah.
And so how could you speak to that a little bit? I mean, how do you determine what's false and what's real now?
Well, let's take it back to the relational component. In simplest terms, someone's either going to be a value creator or they're going to be a value extractor. Now, if I said people, fall into two categories, they're givers and they're takers, no one would raise their hand and say, I'm a taker. Nobody would, nobody would be so foolish as to expose themselves in that way. But the reality is exactly what you just talked about. Are people doing what they're doing in order to get something out of it or to bring something to it? The way I like to put it is, a value extractor is someone who rushes the table to get whatever they can for themselves because they have a scarcity mentality and they believe there's not enough to go around. So in order for them to survive, they have to get what they can. They're going to take as much off the table as they can. A value creator, on the other hand, is someone who brings as much value to the table as they possibly can. And when value creators all bring to the table what they can, they contribute to the whole. At the end of the day, there will be a surplus left on the table that then can be shared by everyone who's created value. So a good, healthy relationship is a relationship where each party creates value for the other party. And it's interesting that you should mention it, because right now you see a lot of people online. You see a lot of people on LinkedIn. They want to connect with you, and it sounds really, really genuine. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you get hit with is, this is what I'd like to ask from you, or will you connect with me so I can? And it's not about really trying to bring value to the table. They're just frantically trying to extract from others value from themselves. You see this a lot in networking environments, right? We've all gone to the, to the networking event where you go and you distribute cards and people ask what you do. And as soon as they recognize the fact that you have absolutely nothing that they're interested in, they're looking over your shoulder to make a connection, see you later. A good friend of mine, Bob Littell, has this concept called net weaving, which is the exact opposite of networking. Networking is going into any environment, trying to figure out what can you extract from others to promote your own agenda. Net weaving is completely contrary, because it's going into every environment, seeking to ask good questions to understand someone else's story and then connect that person with someone in your sphere of influence that you think can help promote their agenda. And I love that. I love that, because that's true value creation. And when value creators come together in any sort of an endeavor, be it a community activity or a corporate endeavor, when you see value creators come together, two things happen. Immediately, the value extractors become marginalized because they become, the dark horses. They're easy to identify. And your value creators can do exponentially more together, because they all have this same mindset of, how can we synergize our efforts to do something great?
So based on the value creator or value extractor, it would seem to me that a value creator, their mindset is really one of abundance, right?
That's right.
Always looking, how do we get better? How can we give back, regardless of our circumstances? Right, because our circumstances are always going to change, right? I mean, we're dealing with this coronavirus now and everybody's at home, but down the road, something else is going to happen. And so just that mindset of just coming from one of abundance, being grateful, regardless of the circumstances, I would think would be a major component of being a value creator.
Yeah. So the questions we need to be asking ourselves right now are, how can we connect more deeply with others? How can we bring encouragement to the table? And what value can I create for others during this period of time? Knowing that it may not come back to me immediately, but in the long run, as you build healthy teams, and obviously, Blair, with you guys being in the mortgage space, you have to build healthy teams. I mean, think of all
Yes.
the other people that you have to interface with. You've got your title, folks. You've got your real estate folks. You've got your appraisers. You've got, all the people in your office. You've got your client base. There are a lot of people that you have to interface with. And right now is your opportunity to invest in growing those relationships. You may not be getting a whole lot of other clients right now, but you can grow those relationships to get to a very healthy place so that when things do turn around, you'll be postured for success.
Absolutely. So let me just kind of mention some quotes from the book and get you to comment on them if you would, because I think they're pretty timely right now, especially based off of what you just said. Our teams everybody's working from home, and clients are all stay at home. Realtors are stay at home for the most part. And it's been challenging, but I just love the value creation. So, if we want to grow, in your book, you say growth requires change, and most people are change resistant. Growth occurs best when people are part of a community. This is because relationships force us to change things about ourselves that simply don't work in real life. So I've got 3 questions from that. The first one is, why do you think people are so resistant to change?
One word: pride.
Okay.
It's pride. People are resistant to change because we want to put forth this image that we are all that we, really don't need anybody, that we have all the answers. I love, there's a Frank and Ernest cartoon. I don't know if you remember Frank and Ernest or those who are listening do, but it was a single frame cartoon with 2 hobos, 2 vagabonds, right? And Frank turns to Ernest and he says, "I guess you could say I'm a self-made man." And Ernest, with a real witty sense of humor, responds and he says, "Well, then I guess that demonstrates the horrors of unskilled labor." Because the reality is, looking back on it, if I had to do it all over again, I would have sought a whole lot more input from other players who knew far more than I knew to propel me down the tracks much faster. So this idea that we're change resistant, change is necessary for growth. Growth can't happen without there being change. But we're change resistant because change forces us to step outside of our comfort zone. Change, let's put it this way. Most people don't have the wherewithal, the constitutional fortitude to do the deep work of introspection and reflection and change those things about themselves that need to be changed. Think about it in a business sense. This pandemic is forcing us to see the cracks and the weaknesses in our business strategy, causing us to change and pivot on a dime. It's forcing us to see the cracks and the weaknesses in our interpersonal dynamics because, tension abounds and relationships are stressed and we've lost personal touch and we're relegated to technology. And while we are connecting on some level, that connection has lost a lot of the personal touch. This is not like us sitting next to each other on the plane and having that robust conversation that you and I had that connected us as friends moving forward. It's a substitute, but we have to make do with what we have. And so I think what's taking place right now is that this crisis is forcing us to face a lot of things about ourselves and about our plans that really were lacking. And so that's a good thing. But to be forced to change is not something that any of us should be afraid of. It actually is something we should embrace and take to heart so we can use this time to reflect and make life better.
Well, you mentioned something right there. You said we shouldn't be afraid of. Yet when we get squeezed and or cracked and we're dealing with things, one of the things that immediately comes out of that for a lot of people is fear, right?
Sure.
So getting out of your comfort zone for a lot of people is that they just get stuck in their fear. So what are some things that you have seen or you would recommend to help people really just get beyond that fear?
Yeah. Well, again, a great question, because I think this storm that we are experiencing right now in the economy, the storm in healthcare, the storm in corporate circles, pales in comparison to the storm that is looming on the horizon. And that's the devastation that's going to be wrought in the wake of what we're experiencing now when it comes to emotional health related issues and relational issues, because I think there's a high level of anxiety, there's a high level of fear. And so how do we deal with that? How do we address that? It's interesting. Right now, I'm writing my next book, and that book is on hope, this concept and this idea of hope. And I'm looking at 2 decades of hope theory and research that's been done around the idea of hope. And I think it's especially necessary during these periods of time that we deal with reality. In other words, we deal with candor. And I'm talking about candor, first of all, for ourselves when it comes to our personal growth and development. You know, the question we have to ask ourselves is, okay, if we are afraid, why are we afraid? Is it because maybe we made a lot of assumptions about life previously when life was easy that now have come, we've discovered our illusion. One of those illusions is this idea of control. We are not in control of as much as we think we are in control of. And when that illusion is burst, that makes a lot of people fearful. Well, we have to deal in reality. We have to deal in candor with the fact that we aren't in control. So we have to learn to separate those things that we can control from those things that we can't control. And one of the only things we can control is us, how we process information, how we think things through, how we feel about them, and then the behavior that comes out as a result of that and the relational consequence of that. So the first thing you're asking that we should do in a period of time like this is deal in candor first with ourselves and do the hard work internally to identify those factors that have led to fear or anxiety or a sense of restlessness and be willing to deal with that. And then secondly, to look at our behavior and determine how is it impacting the people around me. There are a lot of jokes and a lot of memes out there right now about the challenges of being at home with your family and homeschooling and all that kind of stuff. But here's what I like to say, that challenging times reveal what good times conceal. And
wow, that's fantastic. Say that one more time, please.
Challenging times reveal what good times conceal. In other words, when life is good and it's cushy, we get soft. We don't really do the hard work of introspection to think about what makes life really rich. And if you boil it down to, life is rich because of relationships. You can have all the toys and all the trinkets in the world, but if you're relationally deprived, then life's not fun. I don't care who you are. But if your relationships are intact and relationships are healthy and relationships are deep, that will anchor you to the most important things of life, and everything else can go away. But if your relationships are healthy, if you're happy in those relationships, then you've got the world, because you're literally relationally rich. And we know that people and organizations flourish in relationally rich environments, even if they're resource poor, which is interesting. And so, again, it comes back to this idea of candor in relationships and candor with yourself. So one of the things we can all focus on during this period of time where it's uncomfortable and we're not, wanting to face some of these changes is ask for candor in feedback. Not just be open to feedback, but
from people we trust, though, right? From people that we trust.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In other words, start with those closest to you. I ask my wife on a daily basis, hey, baby, am I providing everything you need right now? Am I providing the encouragement, the support? I mean, she's in an industry right now that she's in property management, and they manage apartment communities all across the Eastern Seaboard. I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, she's working 15, 18 hours a day trying to stay on top of the challenges that they're facing right now. And so one of my concerns is, even in the midst of all the things I have to do to maintain my business, I want to make sure I'm providing for her what she needs to maintain her sanity. And so I think one of the questions we can ask is, how am I doing as a spouse, as a dad, as a leader, as a colleague, as a partner in this business endeavor? How am I doing? Am I providing for you what you need? And part of that has to do with just maintaining a sense of closeness. I'm very concerned right now that during this period of physical distancing, we don't have to be emotionally distant. It's not the same. You got to work harder, but it's absolutely essential that we maintain a sense of emotional closeness. So ask those around you in candor to give you feedback and how you can grow. And that's huge. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is just this idea of encouragement. Those who carry hope are beacons of light. Hope is contagious. And so when we can work out our own issues and find a place of peace and solace in the way we're processing information and the way we're addressing the future, we can bring that to others.
Man, boy, I mean, you've said a lot in the past few minutes. And one of the things that kind of putting what you said earlier with regard to how you answered fear is what I hear from that is, if I'm a value creator, I'm others focused. But I have to be careful when I'm fearful, I'm really me focused.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's about, so we have to ask ourselves, if I want to be a really good leader and a value creator, I have to be focused on other people, which should remove that fear. Now I may not enjoy doing videos, or I may not because I'm new to them. But if I'm really truly focused on providing great content to help people, then that fear should diminish. And I just want to add one more thing to what you said about asking your spouse or those closest to you. Before you ask the question, you need to be ready for some honest feedback, right?
Absolutely.
That it goes to your pride answer earlier. I mean, because sometimes we get answers back that we see ourselves one way, but other people see us the way we really are. And so we have to be calm, understand that it's coming from a place of love and concern to get better and improve. But you have to be ready for that honesty to come back. And boy, for me, that's been pretty tough over the years, and it still is tough.
Well, it's critical, and you're right. It's part of the human experience. We talk about this in Relationomics, where we talk about the growth spiral, because you can either, as you engage in the growth spiral, when you receive feedback, you've got one of two choices. You can either ascend, you can embrace that feedback, honestly evaluate that, and ascend the growth spiral to inspiration and unity, or if you get defensive, like what you're talking about, if it's hard for you to receive that, if you justify that, then you get stuck in a rut and you descend that growth spiral, which only leads to alienation and devastation. So when you ask for the feedback, how open you are, how humble you are to receive that feedback is absolutely everything in being able to apply what you receive from that feedback to produce positive changes.
Awesome. I wanted to quote one more thing you said with regard to technology in the book. Technology has bred a spirit of both independence and isolation. Independence in that we really don't need others to show us or teach us anything. So I think now more than ever, because we are socially distanced, it really magnifies that statement. And we need to be very, very careful not to get isolated, not only in our homes, but with our business partners, our teams, and our loved ones that aren't in the house with us. So how can we then flip that around and use the technology in a positive manner to keep the community, keep the relationships going? I mean, do you have any ideas there?
Yeah, I think there's several things that we can do. And one is what we're doing right now. It's interesting because a lot of teams that I work with across the country, they have weekly meetings, but most of those meetings are to drive business forward.
Right.
I'm seeing a lot of organizations, and I'm participating in a lot of calls like this, where organizations are bringing their teams together for encouragement, for personal development, to gain insight that will help them during this period of time to have more clarity in the midst of this chaos. So I think we can capture these opportunities much like what we're doing right now to speak truth and encouragement into other people's lives. The second thing we do is just be more present. Our family is connecting regularly on calls like this, at least once a week, sometimes more often, to make sure that everybody's, we see everybody's faces, and we're actually talking more now than we typically would unless we're getting together for a holiday. So we're capturing that. Another way we can use technology is this whole idea of just personal growth and development, because we do have so much at our fingertips. In the past, when things were easy, we frittered away our time, maybe in social media and wasted time in entertainment. But I think we can seize upon content, good quality content for personal growth and development. And social media is a great way to stay in touch with your friends, but balance that between developmental content and just time spent in entertainment. And so there's access to great ideas and thought leaders that can provide encouragement and hope during periods of time like this. And then, and there's one other thought I'll leave you with when you're talking about technology, which also plays into what we're talking about in terms of value creation. Is one of the things that we know from research, and many of you will experience in your personal lives, is that when you are focused on yourself, when you are overcome with fear, one of the best things that you can do is express gratitude. And so whether it's a Zoom call, whether it's a letter, whether it's an email, think about those people in your world who have made a significant contribution to help you get to where you are, who have been your friends, who have been your mentors, who have been your colleagues that have prodded and encouraged you towards success, and spend at least a few minutes every day. You said how much, at least a few minutes every day, reaching out to people that maybe you haven't touched in a while and expressing your appreciation and your gratitude for for the contributions that they've made into your life.
Man, that's powerful. That's just tremendous. And I would think that with regard to, the way you were talking about teams and what you're seeing other companies do, I think that we don't need to lose sight when you're with your team to just say, hey, how are you feeling? Because when you're at home, that isolation component of not interacting, because when you're in an office with everybody, it's easy. I mean, you're hearing voice inflections, you're seeing the way that they're carrying themselves. So it's very easy to say, you don't look right today. Is everything okay? But boy, when you're distant, they can have something going on that all of a sudden it starts building and building and building and building. So I think that's a pretty powerful question. Just go, hey, Randy, how you feeling today, man? Are you good? What's going on?
So
simple.
It is simple. And here's what I'm going to encourage everybody to do. During this period of time, let's care for one another. Now, take care as an acronym. CARE means to connect regularly. And we just talked about that, all the various ways that we need to be able to connect, because in technology, we can talk to one another. We might be able to see one another, but we've lost touch with one another. And so connect more regularly with those that you care about. Connect is the first piece. A is ask the question. And the question is very simple. How are you doing? How are you doing? Not what are you doing, because everybody's filling their time with all kinds of activity, but how are you doing? And it's just a simple question to help unpack and find out where they are emotionally. How are you doing in the midst of all this? And check in and gauge the emotional temperature of what's taking place. Because honestly, Blair, here's the deal. Right now, what we may be called to do is to help someone more emotionally than we are to help them financially or in terms of services, because there are a lot of people out there that are filled with fear and anxiety, the stress and the tensions of what they're going through right now. Everybody can put a good face on when it comes to, technology and Zoom calls and Facebook Hangouts and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But there are a lot of people right now, you can't begin to imagine, with unemployment as it is right now, and people who have worked the last umpteen years to amass whatever they have, staring into the face of a likely loss, right?
Yeah.
And so just be cognizant of that. Ask the question. And then third are relate effectively. Relate, don't pontificate. Everybody wants to share, how they've got it figured out, their answers, their solutions, or they want to give more information, or they want to debate you, or, they want to talk about politics and whether it's being handled right, whether it's not. Don't relate, don't pontificate. Wherever someone is on that spectrum of finding peace, or if they're very peaceful, or if they're in a sense of panic, don't judge. Just try to meet them where they are. The word is empathy. Empathize with where they are. Try to walk alongside them as best you can. And then E is provide encouragement. So connect, ask the question, relate effectively, don't pontificate, and encourage. Be a beacon of light, be a beacon of hope, because that's what we need right now in the midst of a storm. We need something that's going to anchor our lives when the surf surges.
From the very first conversation that you and I have, what I love about you is it's just solid foundational knowledge and recommendations that when we get going fast, in our hectic environments, when we were prior to social distancing, these are the fundamentals that we all just seem to go by the wayside, and we get caught up in ourselves and doing all these things. So, brother, I very much appreciate you, unpacking, answering these questions for us today and taking this time. I mean, just in this short conversation, you have provided just a ton of information. I think that can help us all improve our relationships, be better human beings, and be fantastic value creators for others. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask Cam if we got any questions.
Yeah, Alexis wants to know, she says, I've been looking for an April book of the month. Would you recommend this to recent college grads entering the workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend it. I mean, what would you expect me to say? I'm the author, right?
Yeah. I guess.
No, it's a terrible book.
Why?
No. Yeah, don't pick it up.
I love it.
I guess she means why. What part of it would pertain?
Well, here's what I would say. Our first book, Remarkable, has been used by a lot of universities. It's been used widely in the marketplace for sure, but it's also being taught at a number of schools in their MBA programs. So it actually helps prepare young people to get out and make a significant contribution in the workforce. As far as Relationomics is concerned, boy, again, I hate for this to sound self-aggrandizing, but Blair, what you just said is so true, because we would all agree that relationships are foundational for business. The subtitle is Business Powered by Relationships. You would think that relationships would be common sense, that at this stage of our life, we would all know how to do relationships well, but common sense is not always common practice. And there are a lot of reasons for that. There are a lot of things that we do in life that just don't work. And a lot of those things don't work in relationships. And the problem is we don't know how to correct those because they're what we call blind spots. Yep. And so there are a lot of blind spots that we have relationally. And the sooner that we can work out those blind spots relationally, the better we're going to be at being spouses and parents and community leaders and business partners and be better for our clients. And so the answer would be, I think this would be a great opportunity. And we have a lot of organizations like your own who are taking this time to do a book club. And they're walking through the content and they're talking about the practical application of the principles that we're talking about. So I would be honored and I would encourage anybody to pick up a copy of the book.
Awesome. Cam, any other questions? What we got?
That's our question. We've got a lot of likes here on the post. So I think a lot of questions too will come in after we post this for everyone to view. So we'll stay on that, and we'll get your input, Randy, on any questions we have after the fact. We'll find out your answers and respond back to them.
Absolutely. And one thing I'd encourage everybody to do is to reach out to me and connect on LinkedIn or Facebook, but you can find me, drrandyross.com is our website, but on LinkedIn, Dr. Randy Ross, and I would love to connect with any of the members of your team who'd like to do that.
Awesome. Thank you again, brother. I appreciate you. Appreciate your guidance, insight, and just hope that your family stays safe and healthy, and really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Stay safe, stay well, and let's stay connected. And let's
You
jump on
got it.
another flight together sometime soon.
You got it, brother. I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Everybody have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.